Welcome, everyone, to the One More Game podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Jeremy Culver, a.k.a. Darcy, and with me is the California Thirst Quencher, Pete Leja. Pete, how you doing, man?
Man, we have had another crazy-ass week. Do you believe that a week ago, Super Bowl Sunday?
Yeah.
It sure doesn't feel like it's been Super Bowl Sunday a week ago. Great game. That game was awesome. Big heavyweight fight. I personally enjoyed it. I know it's probably not everybody's cup of tea, but like a lot of like the strategy and like back and forth they had between the coaches and stuff like that was really cool. I had to do a bunch of like live events throughout the week. Baseball's coming. Pitchers and catchers just reported on like Tuesday. And then like last night we had a bunch of pro wrestling events. Elimination Chamber in Montreal, Quebec, headlined by Sami Zayn and Roman Reigns. That was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
They had Battle in the Valley here in San Jose, up the road a little bit of a ways. It's not that close to me, but it is in California. And then they had it's All-Star Game weekend too for the NBA. They had the 3-point contest headlined by the winner Damian Lillard, and the dunk contest. I don't know if you've seen any of that Dame time. And I don't know, dunk contest. I don't know if you've seen the highlights of that, but man, Mac McClung put on a show.
Oh, I mean,
he's a G-leaguer, but whew, that dude was cold.
Mac has been, for those that don't know, Mac was a phenom in high school with his dunks and what he could do then. And it does not surprise me. I always thought that he was going to find his way into the league, and he did, of course. Has not translated into playing consistently in the league. He's bounced around, as you just said, from the NBA down to the G League and back and forth. But yeah, he of course first G Leaguer basically in the NBA slam dunk contest, and dominates it and does a phenomenal job. And I haven't seen any of the other dunks, but I did see his, of course, following his win last night. And yeah, it was, again, for me, it was like, it was awesome to see, but it didn't surprise me that he was gonna, kick butt at the in the slam dunk contest, because I've seen him from high school kicking butt and dunking and stuff. So
yeah, do you know one dude I want to see? I think he's a rookie this year. The Portland Trail Blazers is Shaden Sharp.
Mm-hmm.
That dude is a human highlight reel this season, and I can't wait for him to get his opportunity, because that dude, man. He has highlights like in games with dunks, so
yeah,
I'm really interested in that stuff.
Yeah, and like you said, I watched Elimination Chamber last night. Had a great time, enjoying myself. FaceTiming one of our good friends during the show, so it was kind of like old times of holding the pay-per-view parties at my house.
Oh, you
like
guys
we used
did the
to
whole
have.
show.
Yeah, we FaceTimed the entire show, watching it together and stuff, and we synced it up so that way like what he was seeing on his TV was exactly the same time of what I was seeing, so we could react to one another. It was a good time. It was a lot of good times, but of course
he hasn't caught up to the updated technology of Discord that's only been around like 10 years, and so you can screen share and stuff. None of that.
None of that. Only FaceTime. Anyways, everybody, we're not here talking about slam dunk contests or wrestling, unless you're talking about PSWF, which just aired earlier today here on Press Start, youtube.com/PressStart28, which you need to check out. But we're here to talk about some video games, and that's here, of course, for the One More Game podcast. So everybody, thank you all for tuning in here to the One More Game podcast. This is a podcast that is centered around making sure you're informed about all the video game news happening around the world, whether it is PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo, or PC. If there's news that you need to know about, we'll make sure that you know about it. When you're listening to this on your podcast service, make sure you hit the subscribe button or the follow button, depending on what your service offers. And if your podcast service allows reviews, please leave a 5-star review and tell everyone why you love the One More Game podcast, because we really enjoy bringing this to you each and every week. If you'd like to be part of the show by asking a question or suggesting a topic for discussion, head on over to pressstartnews.net/onemoregame and fill out that submission form, and your submission could be used on the next episode. Or you can drop it off in chat live when we record it here at youtube.com/PressStart28, and we will bring it up as it comes up in the show. Like Cobalt Hawk has said here, he says, didn't know if the podcast was actually happening or not. Saw there was a 30-second recording earlier. earlier. Yes, that was because we were having some technical issues, and I was trying to fix it all, and still didn't actually fix it. But it's done enough that we could stream, and that's what we're doing right now. So we're streaming to do the podcast, and we will get, of course, for all of you who are listening to it on the podcast services later, we'll be figuring out how to get this over to you very quickly after that. But everyone, thank you so much for tuning in here. And if this is your first time to the podcast, welcome to the podcast. I hope you enjoy your listen, and I hope you enjoy your stay. But if you are returning, you already know what it is. We start off every single podcast talking about what we've been playing lately. So, Pete, what have you been playing lately?
So Thursday, the 16th, was Theater Rhythm Final Bar Line Fantasy. Theater Rhythm came out.
Final Fantasy Theater Rhythm Final Bar Line.
Yeah, okay, sure. No, whatever. Yeah. Anyway, it's a great game. I've enjoyed it a lot and playing that. But in the meantime, the downtime, I wanted to play something a little different, something I hadn't played before, not necessarily a new genre. So I went on my old Game Pass here on Xbox and noticed that a new game came out called SD Gundam Battle Alliance, and that dropped recently. So I downloaded that. Had a nice nostalgia rush. The opening song was fantastic. You get in there, and one of the first battles you're playing against some Zaku's from the original Gundam, blowing that stuff up, and then all of a sudden, just wham, out of nowhere, you start fighting a character, Gundam from one of the more recent series, Gundam Iron-Blooded Orphans, Gundam I think it's Barbados. I forgot the name of the Gundam. And you're facing that, and I remember they play the theme from that, one of the major battle themes, and you're getting a nostalgia rush, and it's really cool. And then the nostalgia rush wears off, and yeah, it's an action RPG. It's fine, it's okay, but a lot of it is hack and slash. And I played better hack and slash Gundam games. They have Dynasty Warriors Gundam series, and that game is fantastic for the hack and slash style. And this one's more of an action RPG. You can like level up your Gundams and stuff and build them up and stuff. It was a little weird because I could max out the levels on my Gundam because I guess the Xbox Game Pass version is like the DLC or something like that, because you can go online and play like complete with levels with the multiplayer. I did not do that, but you can. And so they gave me like a million credits to like level up my Gundam and stuff like that, and it costs like a couple grand to like go like increase your stats significantly, and like maybe like 50 grand to like max them all out on one of them. So it's like, all right, well, now my Gundam's maxed out, now I'm just kind of going around and just blowing everything up, and that's kind of cool, but kind of boring after a while. The storyline is kind of like your token, like, hey, we got to get all the characters in. How can we do that? Oh, let's have the timelines are all getting screwed up, and you're kind of going in and trying to fix the timeline. So you're battling in events that are well known in the Gundam verse for their fans. I went to Gundam Wing. I redid the Iron-Blooded Orphans. There was a Gundam 00, which I never actually watched, but I played some of that. There was a Gundam Seed, a little bit of that in there. 8th MS Team, which I remember watching in my youth. That was an old Adult Swim series that I think came out in the... it originally came out in Japan in the 90s, but it was like an Adult Swim show that only aired like once or twice, and I was kind of surprised that one was in there. It is not voiced in English. It is only voiced in Japanese, so you have to be used to reading subtitles, which I don't mind doing, so that didn't bother me any. But storyline was kind of meh. The fight system was a lot of hack and slashing, which is enjoyable, but also just kind of like, I don't care. One of the more annoying parts was they were talking within the battle, but because you're focused on the battle, like and it's in Japanese, you don't really know what they're saying because you have to read the subtitles, but it's like I gotta focus on what I'm doing here. I can't look down at the screen. So that was one of the more annoying aspects, is like I felt like I was missing like some important plot points going on, and I'm just kind of like not really knowing what's happening in that regard. So that part was kind of aggravating. If you like Gundam, you'll get a nice nostalgia boost from it, especially if you already pay for your Game Pass or something like that. I don't think it's on any other really streaming service. You had to buy it, but it is expensive on like Steam. So if it's not on sale, I believe it's $59.99 last I looked. The The reviews for it are mixed on Steam. I think I saw like a bunch of 7s on like Metacritic when I took a glance, but there's not very many reviews of that either. So I mean, that sounds about right. Like I said, once the nostalgia rush wore off, I kind of was disinterested and kind of couldn't wait for Theater Rhythm to actually come out, which it did, and then I had a blast with that.
Well, of course, Cobalt Hawk has played SD Gundam Battle Alliance, and I knew that. He's finished it completely, and he just said, of course, in the chat that he loves the game, but it's definitely a game best played with friends. So, Pete, that was your fault. You need to have friends. You need to build up some friends and play together. I don't have
any friends. So,
yeah, exactly. Exactly. But also shout out to Miss Wishing Fire in chat there. Hello back to you. For those that don't know, even though she might be embarrassed when I say this, that's my wife, of course, watching from afar over in California right now. So thank you so much for dropping
still
in.
Out here. I thought she was already flown back.
No. She just flew out there. Well. So she's out there right now. But yeah. I haven't played SD Gundam Battle Alliance. I was interested in it before it came out, and had actually been talking with Cobalt Hawk about the game before it came out, and then I never ended up actually playing the demo because I think the demo is still available on PlayStation and the various platforms to play. But Cobalt liked it, and I'm glad that it's on Game Pass at some point. Of course, I will renew my Game Pass and play that, so I'm looking forward to trying it myself. Even like you said, even if it's just for the nostalgia rush of playing some Gundam games there. For myself, I played a lot of things over the week. Still playing Teppen. I forgot real quick. Did you end up playing Teppen?
No, I downloaded it, but that's on my to-do list for sure.
This guy.
Listen to you. Listen, mister, I have a backlog. Get out of here. Get off my back, buddy.
Yeah, this guy decides to play some Magic Arena and doesn't play Teppen. But anyway, I played, obviously, some more Teppen. I've been playing this one mobile game that I just want to give a quick shout out called Retro Bowl. And it's basically a football game like Tecmo Bowl, but it's, obviously a more modern version, and there is it's like almost like a dynasty mode of Madden where you like build up your squad and do these drafts and stuff. I'm having fun with it. It is so much fun, and it is very addictive. Let me just say it that way. But the one that I've been playing the most as of late, and when I say as of late, I kind of mean last night and today for a bit, is Wild Hearts. So Wild Hearts was a game that we had on our upcoming list last week. It released on Friday, and I got it. My wife ended up buying it for me for my birthday, which my birthday is in a week from Tuesday on the 28th. And I started playing it. It is a Monster Hunter game. So those that if you don't like Monster Hunter, you likely aren't going to like this game. It is a Monster Hunter game. You go out, you fight things, you fight big creatures, you collect their, materials from them, and you craft new materials and stuff. But this one is made by, speaking of Dynasty Warriors, this one is made by Koei Tecmo and Omega Force, the people who are behind the Dynasty Warriors series, and it is surprisingly published by EA Originals, which is like such a weird combination. But they published this game. It has gotten great reviews. I think last I had checked, it was sitting at an 81 on Metacritic and on OpenCritic. It is plagued with some performance issues on PC. More specifically, there is some performance issues on console as well, but PC apparently is suffered a lot of performance issues in that regards. But Omega Force and Koei Tecmo have already said a patch is coming out next week to fix those issues and improve performance. So that's good to hear, but I'm having so much fun with it. The mobility is really great, in my opinion. One of my things that I do, even as a Monster Hunter fan, one of the things I do not like about Monster Hunter is sometimes it just feels mobility is slow and attack is slow. And I know that there are ways to speed up the mobility, but it still just never feels fluid in those senses to me. But in Wild Hearts, you can basically like craft these boxes out of thin air called the Karakuri. And like, you can build boxes that can turn into like a fortress wall. Like some people have joked that it's like basically Fortnite Monster Hunter. But one of the things I love is like you can basically build this like springboard that you can use to like jump basically to the right or to the left or dash forward, and it's so much fun. I'm having a blast with it. I'm currently using a weapon. I cannot remember the name of it. I want to say it's Ngata, but basically it's a umbrella with swords at the end of the spin of the umbrella, I guess is the way to describe it, and it's a ton of fun. I really enjoy it. Stop using heavy weapons. That's what Cobalt said in chat. I'm not using heavy weapons. I'm just speaking in general, man. That's my one gripe about Monster Hunter. Even as a Monster Hunter fan, it's why I've always preferred God Eaters, because God Eater is a little bit faster in a sense when it comes to the combat. Wild Hearts fixes that. But yeah, I'm having a blast. I can't wait to actually be done with the podcast to go play some more and tackle more of these big beasts, the kimono as they call them. And so yeah, if anyone is picking up Wild Hearts, please let me know, because I will definitely look to group up with people. And also as a reference, because of course you talking about Game Pass already. Remember, Game Pass owners, you have EA Play, which gives you a 2-hour trial. I think it's 2 hours, maybe it's up to 5 hours, but you can try Wild Hearts using your EA Play pass right now. And of course you can use it to see if you like it, and then having EA Play gives you a 10% discount on buying a Monster Hunter or Wild Hearts game or EA game. So you could always get it for a little bit cheaper if you'd like. But yeah, I'm having an absolute blast with the game.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Long list of games there. You've had Teppen and Wild Hearts. Glad you're really enjoying that one. I can never get into the Monster Hunter style of games. It's like, to me, it's always just like if you take the MMORPG aspects and then took out like all the story and just left the grindy missions, and I'm just like, nah, man, I'm good.
Yeah, but it's
I understand a lot of people enjoy that, but me, I'm just like, I can't.
Yeah, I get it. It's definitely not everyone's cup of tea, but it's just it's, to me, it's a lot of fun, and especially like the challenging nature of fighting some of these the larger beasts and monsters. And of course it becomes really fun when you link up with friends and you guys try to tackle these monsters together.
I will say that part is definitely that part is enjoyable when you're with friends.
Yeah. I also have like a ton of demos downloaded that I need to try to get through, because there is a bunch of demos on Steam at the moment that I found interesting. So we'll see if we get to them. I think I have 7 downloaded. I have yet to play one of them at the moment. One of those being, just a quick shout out, Marvel's Midnight Suns. That is currently on Steam. You can play that for free until tomorrow, I think Monday. So as recording, you can play that for free till then. It's a trial, so go try it out if you are looking at it. Also, one last shout out that I want to give before we move on is, as I had said before, we're going to put in some games that you can buy to help here at Press Start. And the 2 games that I picked this week are Blood Bowl 3. So that's a game that's going to be coming up on our upcoming releases a little bit later over on Green Man Gaming. You can get it currently pre-ordered for 22% off. That drops the price to $23.39. So use the link down below if you want to check that out. And Dust and Neon. This game looked really interesting to me. I think if I remember correctly, it's kind of like a roguelike type of game. But it just came out last week, and it is currently 36% off over at Green Man Gaming, making it $19.19 here in the US. And so, again, use those links down below, buy those games, and it does come back and support the channel. But we've been talking about what we've been playing lately for quite a bit. Let's get to our gaming catalog, because we have quite the list, with Ubisoft saying it's going to attend E3 if it happens. Game Freak says it's important that they make non-Pokemon games, and Microsoft finally confirms some news about Game Pass. That's all coming up here on the One More Game podcast, but let's start with our main title. And again, that is Ubisoft says it will attend E3 2023 if it happens. We're going to Video Games Chronicle for this article written by Andy Robinson, and it goes as follows. Ubisoft has confirmed it intends to attend the revamped E3 Expo in Los Angeles this year if it happens. Speaking during an earnings call on Thursday, the company's CEO, Yves Guillemot, said, "If E3 happens, we will be there and we will have a lot of things to show." It's not clear why Guillemot was alluding to apparent uncertainty around this year's E3 taking place. Details of E3's revamped 2023 format, which will see separate business and consumer events split between 4 days in June, was revealed late last year. And just last month, new E3 organizer ReedPop told VGC that it had received a tremendous amount of interest from many of the biggest companies in the industry and that it was confident the lineup would be worth the trip. Ubisoft has declined to comment on this story. The Assassin's Creed publisher commitment to backing E3 comes following reports that Sony and Nintendo will not be attending this year's event. Historically, Ubisoft has been a staunch supporter of E3 and hasn't missed a show for the last 20 years. There's also been uncertainty around Microsoft's plans for the event. Microsoft will have some sort of presence in Los Angeles this year with an already announced summer showcase. However, according to IGN, the Xbox firm will not have a show floor presence at the Los Angeles Convention Center itself. The same publication claimed the Xbox parent could partner with E3's organizer to hold a separate event from the LACC ahead of the event, which matches with what VGC has heard from their own sources. It is important to note E3 will officially run from Tuesday, June 13th until Friday, June 16th, according to organizer ReedPop, which has taken over the running of the flagship industry event from the Entertainment Software Association. Of course, there's a couple of more details here for this article, but Pete, I kind of want to pass it along to you. So E3 has already said it's happening. You know, they've done numerous reports. They've said that it's happening, but then Yves Guillemot decides to say this, if it happens, we'll be there. So, Pete, what do you feel off of that comment?
I first thought, I wonder if there's like a misunderstanding in translation kind of thing. Because, I mean, you can buy tickets for E3, right? Are they on sale yet? I assume they kind of are. I mean, it's only 4 months away at this point.
I think they're on sale right now, yeah.
Like, that seems to be a big issue. You don't actually know if you're actually going to have the event or not, especially when this is supposed to be like your big return after, you know, the pandemic. So I don't know. That does raise an eyebrow, though. Like, what do you mean if it happens? What's going on? And then they don't comment on it and be like, yeah, sorry, we kind of flubbed that one. It's actually, there's nothing that we've heard that says it's not. I mean, there's a couple things that you would question that maybe it was, whether or not it would actually happen. I mean, the biggest one is obviously like Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft not actually being a part of it. But like those also, like that was happening back in 2019. So I mean, like, and E3 happened then. The closest thing that any of those three major companies had is probably going to be similar to this year, where Microsoft has something going on like across the street or a little down the way. But it wasn't actually part of the festivities, so that part was a little odd. So I don't know why that would detract from actually having the event. The other thing I can think about is like, well, are a lot of these companies getting double booked maybe with Jeff Keighley's Summer Game Fest? That's the only thing I could think of that maybe it's like, because there was a similar situation in the voice acting world last year during the summer. So Anime Expo is one of if not the biggest anime conventions in America, and it's, I don't know if it's been for its entire life cycle, but for a majority of its life cycle, and certainly recently, it's happened over 4th of July, or over the weekend closes to 4th of July here in Los Angeles. So there's some backstage stuff that's going on. Basically, the shorthand is that voice actors weren't they were getting paid in like benefits, but not actually getting paid to show up, but they were being requested to show up. And a lot of these events, like they're I mean, it's kind of like working for exposure kind of thing, right? Where it's kind of BS like that. So they were having their own, they were planning on having their own convention called AVOX, Anime Voiceover Expo, I believe, is what it stood for. I could be wrong with that, but it's called AVOX, and it was happening the same weekend. and they ended up having to cancel that event because a lot of the voice actors were getting double booked at Avox while also having to be at Anime Expo. The major ones, I believe, were like Sword Art Online because it was the 10th anniversary for Sword Art Online last year, and they were having a bunch of major events at Anime Expo. So a lot of them were getting double booked, and a lot of the vendors, which is the bigger issue, were getting double booked and or could not attend Avox, and we're like, well, okay, well, we're not doing that. And Avox was kind of built up as a competitor to AX sort of thing. Like I said, because of the backstage politicking stuff, it was kind of looking like that was the angle they were shooting for. You could be at a more personal level with the voiceover talent. But again, like the vendors, some of the voice actors, but mostly the vendors were not able to attend because they're already working at Anime Expo. And it's like, well, you didn't have to directly contend with that. You could have done this like a different way. And it's kind of like, I'm wondering if a little bit is similar here. Like maybe E3 was like, oh, we got all these vendors, but then they're coming up. But then like, they're seeing Summer Game Fest. And it's like, well, Summer Game Fest seems like it's more popular. Jeff Keighley's things certainly are more popular, especially because they're tied to the Game Show Awards or the Game Award show at the end of the year. So maybe the vendors are a little bit more like, I'm like, well, if you're both running things like concurrently, like around the same time, like I would think we'd just rather go with that one instead of yours. And I don't know if that's going to happen. I would assume not, because like I said, the E3 seemed pretty confident, but it does raise eyebrows. They're just like, well, if it happens, and it's like, what do you mean if it happens?
Yeah, it's one of those things where I don't think that they're getting double booked, as you said, but it could be very well the case. I truly don't know what Yves is thinking, because like Reed Pop has even come out, from this and been like, hey, like, no, we're legit happening. Now, I did look it up real quick. Tickets are not on sale just yet, but media registration is, of course, going on. Exhibitor registration is going on. And as, of course, said in the article, Reed Pop has said that, like, hey, we have a lot of interest in this. Now, that is a whole different discussion of what is that interest. Is that some of the big players like the Ubisoft, the Capcoms, the things of that nature. Obviously Ubisoft, as is said in this article, and as Yves said, is that like they'll be there if it happens, and I just add that if because of course that's what they said. But like Ubisoft has always been an E3 person or E3 show. I mean, they are notorious for, of course, because of their Just Dance game, having basically like a 5-minute dance break in the middle of their event to promote their next Just Dance, and they always how they handle that aspect. And I'm sure that they're gonna try to do something like that again at E3 this year with a big dance break in the middle of their showcase. But then again, like, is Capcom going to be one of those, or is Capcom going to switch over to Summer Game Fest? Now, last year, PlayStation, in a sense, jumped over to Summer Game Fest, because remember, we had this discussion, Pete, on our podcast about they did a state of play right before the Summer Game Fest kickoff live event, and it was a great one. That was where we saw Street Fighter 6, Resident Evil 4, the Final Fantasy 16 trailer, all that. But they did say, or it was, I guess, advertised that it was a Summer Games Fest event, even though it wasn't part of the Summer Games Fest kickoff live. Where does that fit into the mix? Obviously, Sony has already said they're not going to be at E3, and that's not a surprise. They haven't been with E3 for many years now. I think the last time they did one was in 2018. Nintendo, if they're not there, that would be one of the more surprisings, because Nintendo has been there, even though they haven't been there physically. They've always had a Nintendo Direct through E3 for many, many years. So this would be, of course, as reported, this would be kind of one of the shocker ones. Xbox, similarly, would be another one, because Xbox had basically been there for a while. For any in-person E3, they had been there. And I think that the last E3 was the only E3 they the all digital E3 during the pandemic world. Was the only time Xbox wasn't there. So I don't know where Eves is going with this. I assume he's going to be there. Like they said, they have a lot to show off, and it makes sense. They have the Avatar game that's supposed to come out this year. They have the Assassin's Creed Mirage that's going to come out this year. They probably have a number of other things. They've said they've canceled a lot of games recently, but they've said in a recent article, we didn't have it in the show, but like Eves has said, they canceled a number of games because the problem they were facing was they were developing too many of them. So they scaled back basically to move forward. But like, it's just such a strange comment to make, I guess, is at the end of it.
And if they want to do an E3 and they're not going to get the big name companies that own the game consoles themselves, they're going to need a lot of these Ubisoft type companies to like show up, because it benefit the E3 I don't think doesn't necessarily benefit like the big companies. That's why they're not showing up. Like, because I mean, Sony will just do their own thing. People will watch. Xbox, same thing. Nintendo with their directs. But the company, I think the companies that benefit most from E3 are like the indie companies, because people walk around, they kind of see like, oh, hey, I didn't hear about this game or something like that, or I don't really know much about this company, but they're here. Let's go take a look and see what's going on there. So, I mean, like, I think E3 we talked about it before. I think it's net positive. Maybe that's a nostalgia pushing me, but I think overall it's a good thing to have, and I think it has merits where Summer Games Fest has other merits that are good, but lacks in some of these things because it is a digital event. It's not like a major event. I know they're going to have a live like hosting thing like for probably their kickoff show that's going to happen in the middle of it like they did last year or whatever, but I mean that's not the same thing as like a whole actual convention. So
yeah, if I could be wrong, but I think the only thing that Summer Game Fest has technically in a physical format is their kickoff show, and then it's all media stuff. Like, you can't actually attend a Summer Game Fest, where E3 you can. And so I agree with you. I think like E3 still could be great for those indie showcases. And again, you still want to get those major third-party publishers if you can. So again, Ubisoft being there is great for them to get. But again, can they get the Capcoms? Can they get the Electronic Arts? Can they get Square Enix to show up, and be a part of their show? All of these third-party groups, Embracer Group, Tencent, things of that nature. Can they get those there? And what do they bring is going to be, I think, key to the success of E3 this year and, of course, going forward. We're going to go to, speaking about Nintendo, let's go to one of their, of course, development studios, Game Freak. And it says, Game Freak says that it's very important to continue making non-Pokemon games. This is coming from Chris Scullion over at Video Games Chronicle, and it goes as follows. Game Freak will continue to make games that have nothing to do with Pokemon, one of the studio's directors has said. Last month, the studio released Pocket Card Jockey Ride-On, a remake of its cult favorite 3DS horse racing solitaire mashup exclusively on Apple Arcade. Now, speaking to Axios, Ride-On's director, Masao Taya, stressed that the studio was committed to making more non-Pokemon games. Quote, we believe that it is very important for the studio to continue making and releasing titles outside of the Pokemon series, Taya said. In recent years, the resources needed for game development have grown and grown, so Development Department 1 has been trying out a style of development where it works with external studios. A decade ago, Game Freak set up an initial initiative called Gear Project, in which developers could pitch original game ideas during quieter periods when Pokemon development isn't as intense. Although the developer is best known for the Pokemon series, it has released a number of smaller unrelated games in the past, such as Harmo Knight, Tembo the Badass Elephant, and Giga Wrecker. I did not realize that was the name of a game. Anyways, Taya comments to Axios echo similar comments made to VGC last month by Masafumi Saito, the general manager of Game Freak's Development Department 1. Quote, it is very important to Game Freak to keep taking on the challenges of creating original games, Saito told us. Quote, I think that creating a game from scratch, putting it out there, and getting a good reception is a great motivator for creators and is also very significant in terms of its meaning for the growth of the company. Pete, how do you feel about those statements, especially when Pokemon continues to sell tens of millions of copies all the time?
Well, it's not a one-to-one comparison, but my first thought while reading this was 343 Industries. we've talked about how they've done all the Halo games since they took over with what would have been in like Halo 4. I don't think they did ODST, right? That was still
No,
still
ODST, if I
Ubisoft.
remember correctly, was 343.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah, I'll check while you're talking, though.
Either way, but we mentioned how like it seems like the last several Halo games have fallen flat, and maybe like taking a step back and working on another project will freshen their mind, freshen their looks, give them different ideas. And I think similarly it works here, and I applaud Game Freak for trying other things. I mean, we talked about it before, but game designers are artists. They're not just like robots that work to be like, oh, we're gonna make the perfect game and try to make a fun game and sell out a bunch of stuff. I mean, the business people might think that, but the designers and developers themselves, they're like, they're trying to work a craft that they love, and most cases, Pokemon not being one of them, obviously, but most cases don't make a whole lot of money on it. They have to kind of like get lucky on a lot of the cases. I think working on other games, trying to maybe they catch another lightning in a bottle like Pokemon, and all of a sudden now they got two big games to work on, and they make even more money. Or maybe working on another game, like makes them think about like, oh hey, maybe this idea doesn't work here, but can we implement it maybe in one of our Pokemon games? So you can even get that aspect where you're you try ideas that, or you had ideas that you wanted to implement in Pokemon, but maybe it doesn't make sense there. But it's like, hey, what if we tried it in another game and see how it works there? And maybe we could twist it and tinker with it to maybe one day get a chance to put it in one of these other games that we're like known for. So I applaud them, and I think it's net positive to be working on different things. You don't always want to be focused on the same thing because your eyes kind of get strained. That's a cliche. You get too focused and you might miss something like the forest from the trees, and you take a step back and kind of overlook the entire thing. So like I said, there's monetary benefits, but there's also just benefits creatively that they get to stretch out their wings and not get like monotone and focused on the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. They get to work some of their other creative muscles, and I think that helps overall for making them even better Pokemon games and just good games in general.
Yeah, I agree with you in that aspect of like, sometimes you need to try some other things to get new ideas to push into stuff. And also similarly, it's always good to just work on something different for a little bit, even if it's just a smaller side game. You look at like the publishers of or the developers like, Final Fantasy, for instance. I know they have multiple studios, but like they're not just known for Final Fantasy, right? Square Enix, and they have, various games. Sony Santa Monica, for instance, like right now, of course, they're known for the God of War series, but like they've made other games in the past and, tried some different things. And I think that that's important to do. Quickly for an update with 343 Industries, you're right. It looks like the first thing that they did was the Combat Evolved Anniversary game, but then they worked on Halo 4. It looks like, based off of looking at ODST's page, that 343 helped out in some way. But yes, Bungie was, of course, the developer for that one. So you're right with the Halo 4 aspect, but I'm not entirely surprised by this because, again, this game is a remake of a game that came out on 3DS, and as it said here, they have released some other games before. But it is surprising in a sense that they're kind of coming out right, like saying this aspect. And I don't think it's one of those where they're trying to say, of course, that Game Freak is gonna ever stop making Pokemon games, or obviously if the well continues to put water in your
I know
your
where their
bucket.
Bread is buttered.
Exactly.
I know I've used like 5 cliches in this topic, but
yeah, but like of course it's one of those things where I think it's important to see or important for them to do this, but I also am curious as a consumer now, what are some of these other games that they may work on? Yeah, of course this jockey game looks interesting to me. I don't know if I'll ever play it, especially with it being on Apple Arcade, but what else could they bring? Because Game Freak, technically speaking, you're so used to the Pokemon games. It's one of those like, what else do they bring to the table, and what can they create and expand upon? I'm curious to see what happens, and so I just found this article interesting, and I want to check out this Tembo the Badass Elephant now. I want to see a little bit about that game because
how badass does the elephant have to be? Honestly, let's call it a badass elephant. Elephants are pretty badass automatically. So
I'm curious to see where that level meets for that elephant. Let's go to our next article. This is an article from GameIndustry.biz. It's written by Brendan Sinclair, and it is Microsoft confirms Game Pass cannibalizes sales. The article goes as follows. The UK Competition and Markets Authority provisional reports on the Microsoft Activision Blizzard acquisition includes an admission from Microsoft that putting games into its Game Pass subscription service cannibalizes sales of those titles. Quote, Microsoft also submitted that its internal analysis shows a redacted % decline in base game sales 12 months following their addition on Game Pass, the CMA noted in its report. That confirmation runs counter to claims Xbox head Phil Spencer made in 2018 that Game Pass boosts sales rather than undermines them. Quote, when you put a game like Forza Horizon 4 on Game Pass, you instantly have more players of the game, which is actually leading to more sales of the game, Spencer said, adding, you say, well, isn't everyone just going to subscribe for $10 and go play this thing? But no, gamers find things to play based on what everybody else is playing, end quote. Elsewhere in the CMA's report, it cites Microsoft as saying that Activision took a dim view on putting its titles into multi-game subscription services on any platform, believing that, quote, severely cannibalizes B2P or buy-to-play sales, particularly in the case of newer releases. Now, Pete, what do you think about this? Because, of course, as the article points out, this is counter to what Phil Spencer has at least said publicly in the past.
Well, I mean, Game Pass itself is like a long-term idea, like with short-term negatives for long-term profit. I mean, it's obviously mostly focused on Microsoft itself. Because again, like I know you kind of shot the idea down, but yeah, if you're only playing a game like Forza, and you're just like, oh, well, I can rent it essentially for a month for $10 on, or $15 or whatever on Game Pass instead of buying $50 or $60, $70 now at this point on a game that, I may, I really enjoy, but I don't know how much play I'm actually going to get out of it at this stage of whatever life or whatever your life is at that point. Maybe you're busy with work, you're older, you got other responsibilities or whatever. So like, yeah, I mean, short term, it's never like, it was never actually going to do that. Long term, it's more of a benefit for certain games, like, because you'll have that and you'll play Forza and then they'll recommend something like, oh, hey, I haven't tried this game before, let me play that. But again, I mean, like, Microsoft does it with the benefit solely in mind of Microsoft itself. And yeah, especially for like a lot of the major companies that probably spend a lot more money on these games, like an Activision Blizzard, it's not going to be nearly as beneficial for them to put their games on these kind of services because they're not going to get the money. Like they'll get a kickback. I'm sure they get some sort of a kickback for doing so, for putting their game on there. But for a newer game, especially, like a day one release is like probably the worst possible thing. Like if it's like a 6 months or a year into a game's reign, it probably matters less because people would have already bought the game, and like you might actually get some of that rub of like, oh, hey, these people either they're new to the genre and heard that this one was like a good entry point for the genre, or they love the series but never had the opportunity to play it, but now they do. Or maybe they were saving up and forgot about it for whatever reason, and like they'll see it on Game Pass and it's like, oh, hey, now I can get to play it, and then they'll go and buy it. But again, like that's 6 months, a year, 18 months in the game's life cycle when you're mostly focused on what it does, like kind of like when it first happens in a lot of the cases of the games. Like we were talking about, I forgot the company name we were talking about recently, but they were like criticize the. Was it the game the company we were just talking about? We were just talking about 343. No, it wasn't 343. But the company canceled several games because they were like, oh, well,
Ubisoft.
Oh, it was Ubisoft. Okay, yeah, I was for some reason I was blanking on it. But like the Mario Rabbids game like didn't do well, even though it was like only like been released for 2 months. Like we thought it would do better with all these other big name games coming out even. if your focus is going to be what it does in the first games cycle of your fiscal year that it's going to be in, and your game is on something like Game Pass where it costs a lot less money to get that, you're probably not going to see a whole lot of benefit in that regard. And your fiscal year of that particular cycle is not going to, or whatever quarter that is probably not going to look as good, especially since, like, again, the subscription money doesn't go to you, the company that made the game. You get whatever kickback that Xbox, whatever contract deal they signed to put it on there. All those subscriptions go to Microsoft, so like you're not getting actually the direct benefit from that. So yeah, I applaud Phil Spencer for kind of spinning it around, saying like, oh hey, well they'll get new gamers and new players, which is a technically true statement, but they don't necessarily get that money though.
Yeah,
because they're not actually buying the game; they're paying your subscription service to play the game that's already there. So it's a long term game. It's definitely not a short term game. So, and if you're not careful, like the company that owns the streaming service is going to be the one that benefits the most out of all of it, as usually how these companies try to go when they try to make money.
Yeah, I'm gonna sound a little snarky when I say this, but like I have been saying this for years that this is the case, and I've had so many people tell me I'm wrong, and they point to Phil Spencer saying these things, and I've said like over and over, I'm like, it doesn't matter what he says, it's true. If you put it on a service, and just like you described, if it's somebody who's on the fence about trying the game, in the past, they had to make a conscious decision of, do I buy the game or do I not? And if they were leaning towards buying the game, they would buy the game. And if they didn't like the game, well, that sucked for them, but they already bought the game, right? And that's just how it is. But with Game Pass, you don't have to. You can just, like you said, you have the subscription, you just start playing it. Now, granted, there are two sides to the coin, as you said, with this aspect, right? The more people that try the game, let's use Hi-Fi Rush, for instance, because, of course, that blew, out of the water. Even people who were not like fully invested or like wanting to play this game, when you see everybody trying this game out and are having a blast, what are you going to do? You're going to go try it out. And if you don't have Game Pass, maybe you go buy it because you're like, wow, everyone's really enjoying this game. I want to buy it now. So like that helps in a marketing aspect of like driving the conversation, the talk on social media is going to drive some people over to buying the game. But of course, there's also the other side of it too, where it's like there's the other factor of, if I don't have it on a subscription service, but everyone who did buy the game is, again, dominating the conversation and trying it, well, now I'm going to jump over and buy it instead of just subscribing to do this. And so this doesn't surprise me. It's more so, again, like confirmation of something I've been saying for a while. And it's why, again, I think a lot of people want PlayStation to, take on the Game Pass model of day and date with their first parties, but they're just not going to unless there's a significant decline in their sales of their first party games, which there isn't at the moment. I mean, PlayStation games are well polished, great games. I mean, obviously very well reviewed games, as you can look at Horizon and Ghost of Tsushima, as well as, of course, God of War Ragnarok. They sell really well. And that's great for PlayStation because those are also big budget games. Those take a lot of money to make, and they need to make their money back. But if it's going to hurt the sales, even if it's a subscription service, which obviously PlayStation wants you to subscribe because that does benefit them, like we've had that conversation of it's consistent money in a sense from there, it still hurts them to put it on the service, because then that means the people who subscribe to the service are no longer dropping the $70, whatever it is, for the game. So that month, instead of getting $80, you got $10, and that's a huge drop off when you're trying to figure out, well, what is the budget we're going to give for our next game? And again, Xbox is doing exactly as you said. It's a long-term plan. They look at these short-term hits at times are just part of the game because it fulfills their long-term plan. And it also helps that they have Microsoft money, and Microsoft money can eat some of those losses, especially up front, because of, again, the long-term games. You're looking at $1 trillion.
Microsoft money has a T next to it. They don't have that B next to it like Sony and Nintendo. You got Nintendo money, you got Sony money, and then you got Microsoft money.
You got Microsoft money, right? So of course,
good way to put it. That is a fantastic way to put it.
It makes sense. But again, for me, it's like this was a no-brainer. I didn't think it needed to be said as much as whatever Phil said beforehand. And of course, now it's in documents. It's like showing that like they did know behind the scenes that it does hurt sales, but that doesn't mean that it hurts the game's exposure. That doesn't necessarily mean that it hurts the game long term. It does just mean it hurts sales. And of course, the company has to weigh that out when they're going to the decision of how do we go about potentially putting our game on a service, and when do we do it? Like you said, if you put it out right away after the game gets out there, that's going to hurt your initial sales. And does that fit into your picture of long-term goals? Or is it like you said, you sell it at first, and then when you feel like sales are starting to trickle down and not come in as quickly, do you now take that lump sum to get it on a service, knowing that you might not have gotten a lot of sales moving forward, but at least now you got this lump sum to use towards your next project or plans, so to speak. So there's that. Let's talk about a game that was or is, I should say, free to play, but is kind of seeing that long-term plan not really playing out, and that is MultiVersus. We're going to IGN for this article written by Alessandro Filari, and it is MultiVersus peak player count plummets to below 1,000 amid content drought after a strong debut. It goes as follows. MultiVersus had a strong debut in the summer of 2022, quickly climbing up the most played charts on Steam and consoles. However, with content drops and seasonal updates sporadic, it's become apparent that interest in MultiVersus has subsided considerably. Per a report from Video Games Chronicle, player activity in the PC release of MultiVersus has dropped close to 99% from its strong debut. This current activity is a far cry from the game's impressive start to July 2022, which saw player activity peaking at 153,000 online users during its launch week. These numbers come from the SteamDB online database, which tracks Steam games activity and how many active users are engaged. Currently, MultiVersus on PC is charting at less than 1,000 players as of this time, and there hasn't been much news about the game since last early January. At launch, MultiVersus quickly became a popular game due to its Smash Bros. Style, taking on various Warner Brothers and Warner Brother adjacent IPs, mainly focusing on DC superheroes and villains, Cartoon Network characters, the various Looney Tunes, and even Arya Stark from Game of Thrones. The roster for MultiVersus is certainly I don't even know that word, so I'm going to skip it. And therein lies its charm. Getting to see Batman and Steven Universe brawl will always be amusing, and MultiVersus backs that up with rock-solid fighting. Now, of course, there is supposed to be some content updates coming here in the near future. But, Pete, what do you think about this drop-off? Because I know you and I both tried out MultiVersus at one point.
Eclectic was that word.
Eclectic, yeah, there you go. Thank you.
It's when I saw this article, I saw it even before you sent it into the thing. I was disappointed. It's kind of a bummer. We've discussed on this podcast the idea of trying to carve your niche into a genre, which I think we can probably comfortably say. I know there's the grander genre of like fighting games, but like the style of Super Smash Brothers is kind of like its own genre of fighting game now. I'm not a science guy, so I don't remember how it does, but you know how they got like the kingdoms and then they go down like, it's kind of like, fighting games is in the kingdom, but it's like a genus, and then you drop down even further for that. And the Super Smash Brothers style is kind of like that. It's got its own style, and I thought this was a really good rendition of it. But you got to keep up when you're having a free to play game like that. You got to keep up on the content, man. You got to keep having that come. You got to keep having it go. You see Fortnite doing something new basically like every couple of weeks, every month, and Like they even had the content for this one pushed back a little bit. They were supposed to release Marvin the Martian. I think it got pushed back to March, even though it was supposed to be released in February. I believe it says in this very article. The most recent content update came in January 2023. Season 3 was set to roll out in February. However, the new set content was delayed until March 31st. So yeah, I mean, you got to keep that stuff going when it's free to play, because people are just they're gonna leave. They're gonna go find something else to do. When you are having people pay money based on their time spent, like that is the monetary function that you're using. You have to keep their interest, and the only way to keep your interest in a game like this is to add new stuff. They will need to add new things, have people keep coming back to it. They don't have the stability, the base that Super Smash Brothers did, having their first game come out in like N64 back in the 90s. This is a brand new game, and it's really cool seeing Shaggy and Batman team up against some characters from like LeBron James from Space Jam and like something like that. But you got to keep it going. You got to keep the new ideas flowing. It's tough. It's not easy, but if that's the kind of game you want to play, you cannot stop. You cannot take a break. You have to have these events. You have to have new stuff coming out. And it's disappointing because, like you said, we both played it. I enjoyed it. I don't think you liked it as much as I did. You said it was a little slower, but I was playing with friends a lot. We had a blast, and then we just kind of gravitated away. Where it's like, oh, I'm gonna go play this game. Oh, I'm gonna play Monster Hunter. Oh, I'm gonna go play, whatever, Chained Echoes or, whatever's going on. And you kind of like you just don't ever really go back to it because there's no incentive to, like, because you kind of just forget about it. That's why part of the reason why, and that's even doubly true when you don't have your niche like Fortnite does or like Super Smash Brothers does or something like that. You have there has to be something that keeps people coming back to it. And it seems like that MultiVersus has had a issue with keeping that new content coming.
Yeah, it's I think it boils down to the struggle with content, as of course this is in the Video Games Chronicle article part of it, but like the first season you saw 5 new characters get introduced, but in season 2 you only had 1. And of course that is a big difference. Of course that's you gotta the one that was introduced in season 2, Marvin the Martian, a character that I do love from Looney Tunes, but you gotta vibe with that character. You gotta be connected to that character to even like care about Marvin the Martian being added. And there's a number of other things around it, but I think at the end of the day, part of it is, do you realistically think Warner Brothers IP hangs with Smash Bros characters and like the IP characters that are being introduced into Smash Bros? And that's the hard part. Smash Bros Ultimate, of course, content is done for that one. It's already been reported, right? That one is done. But it is still a highly competitive game. There's tournaments all the time. People still are always looking to play in it, and I think that also helps, of course, that game stay in the competitive limelight, and of course people jumping into it all the time. But also because it has Mario and Samus and Street Fighter characters now and Final Fantasy characters and all these things, but like, Warner Brothers has a great IP, and I'm not trying to discredit it, but it's like, if you're looking at the weight and you're going, I want this IP of characters or this IP of characters, are you going to choose the Nintendo version of IP of characters or Warner Brothers? And I think most people are going to gravitate and grab that Nintendo IP of characters. So Warner Brothers just has to figure it out. The game itself is not bad. Like you said, I mean, I liked it. I had fun with it, but I was like, I wasn't as enthralled with it, like you said, as you were. And I know I've seen it from other friends, is like the combat is just rough for people who are used to Smash Bros characters. They're like, the MultiVersus characters just do not connect like it does in there. And I mean, combat wise, the hitboxes, the movement, all that jazz is different. And so like, you really have to carve and get people interested in it to really keep that thing going. And right now they're struggling with it. And delaying your seasons is not a good way with trying to get your content rolling and getting people interested in it. But I obviously, as always, I hope for the best for it. I want the game to succeed. I want the developers to succeed. But we've seen a number of live service games shut down recently, and it's one of those things of where is the bar, in a sense, for MultiVersus and Warner Brothers at this moment? Like, where is that bar from we continue working on this, and where is the bar of, all right, we toss in the flag and we say this is over with? And that's going to be that's the thing that's always scary as you see that player base continue to drop, is you always get ever closer to where is that bar for the company and where's the longevity for this game. Because I think, for speaking for myself at least, if I see that there's no future with this game, I likely would not go back to it. If I see that this game could potentially shut down, because then to me, it's like, what am I investing in when, especially this is like with Smash Bros, I have that game and I can always go back to it. Well, with MultiVersus, once they shut this down, it likely is done. There is no single player offline mode for it. So that's the important factors. But when that could happen is likely much later in the future. At least we're hoping it's much later in the future.
Because that game is really cool. So
yeah, and of course, when is season 3 going that you want to drop money on? Sometime in the future, because it got delayed into March. Maybe it'll hit March, maybe it'll be later. But if you want to drop some cash on some things that you want to play this week, I got you here with the upcoming games releases, and it starts with Tuesday, February 21st. We have Aka Ara for PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Atomic Heart for PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, and PC. That is going to be on Game Pass. Like a Dragon Ishin, PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, and PC. Wednesday, February 22nd, you have Digimon World Next Order for Switch and PC. PSVR 2 is dropping, and all the PSVR 2 games, which originally I started to fill it out, and it was very, very long. So I nixed it. You can just go look online what PSVR 2 games are there, because there's a lot of them.
We'll put it in the show notes, sure.
Yeah. So
that's what I figured happened when you said 30 games. I was like, Jesus.
Yeah. Thursday, February 23rd, you have Blood Bowl 3 for PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. And again, if you want to get that one on PC, use the link down in the description and you will be supporting the show here. Company of Heroes 3 for PC. Grim Guardians Demon Purge for PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Sons of the Forest for PC. And then Friday, February 21st, you have Clive and Wrench for PS5, PS4, Switch, and PC. Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe for Switch, and Octopath Traveler 2 for PS5, PS4, Switch, and PC. Pete, any of these catching your attention?
I mean, I think we gotta not narrow it down, but we gotta point to, PSVR 2, the launch of a new gaming system technically. So, that's a big one. Atomic Heart, because I realized that was gonna be on Game Pass, so I'll probably download that and give that one a whirl. And then the two main ones that I wanted to talk about, Like a Dragon Ishin, specifically because Kenny Omega has a hand in that. He's had a part in it. Big pro wrestler, a real big fan of his. And then Octopath Traveler 2, which I got some leftover PS5 bucks. So thinking about dropping a little bit on that and giving that one a whirl for sure. I've heard a lot of good things about it. Heard a lot of the changes. They have a demo on, I think, all this on Switch, PlayStation, and PC. I got it downloaded on Steam right now, so probably going to give that one a whirl too, the demo. So I'm really hoping big things out of that one because it looks pretty fun.
Yeah, Octopath Traveler is a good one, and obviously have my eye on it. Now, I will say, of course, for those, this Octopath Traveler is a JRPG, and it's a good one, but you definitely have to be. This has to be your type of JRPG, if I'm being honest, as a Octopath Traveler 1 fan, because it is long and it is grindy. So you do have to think about that as you go to play it. But it is, if this is your type of games, you're going to love it, because Octopath Traveler is great and the stories that they tell are awesome. For myself, outside of that one, I've been really interested in Grim Guardians Demon Purge. Grim Guardians Demon Purge is kind of like a side-scrolling like beat 'em up, I guess is the way to describe it, but it's not really a beat 'em up. The same company made Dragon Marked for Death, and I really like that game. I need to get back to playing that one. But of course, that is another one that I'm looking forward to. And then of course, Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe. There is a demo that you can go play. I think it is still available, but at least it was, and it looks like a lot of fun. And Kirby is great. So that would be my other one that I look at, besides PSVR 2, of course. But that's neither here nor there.
The one we really got to point out too is the Blood Bowl 3. Go use our benefits.
Blood Bowl 3 is also a great one, and you should use the link down below so you, of course, get it on PC and support the channel here. But Pete, that is all that we have for this episode. Is there anything you want to leave our listeners with before we send them off into the week?
I'm taking a nap. This has been a long week. It's been an exciting week, but it's been a long week, and I need to kind of relax a little bit. I'm gonna have a really good Sunday afternoon, and then adult tomorrow. That's my plan.
There you go. Look at that. Pete gave you all his energy here for the podcast so that he could then go.
Everything that was left of it. Y'all got every bit of it.
Exactly. And now he's going to go rest on this. So you need to, of course, support Pete and hit the like button on this episode, or on this video over here on YouTube. And if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button, or again, hit a follow over on the various podcast services that we are up on. But everybody, that is all that we have here for the One More Game podcast. I've been one of your co-host, Jeremy Culver, aka Darcy. This has been the California Thirst Quencher, Pete Legia, and we really enjoy bringing this to you. So as always, everybody, stay hydrated, stay healthy, stay safe, and keep on gaming. We'll see you guys on the next episode.